friends of mine. And almost every single one of them has asked themselves the question, what did I do to provoke this? And I know why, because we hear it everywhere we go. What did you do to provoke this? Almost 20 years ago, I was walking home from a late night work shift, not far from here, from the LRT, just over there. And some guy who had followed me after the train grabbed me around the neck. I was incredibly fortunate that somebody was coming the other way, and he saw that and he ran away. But as you can imagine, I was scared to death. And I went home and I thought, what do I do? So I found somebody that I worked with, someone who I thought understood these kinds of things, and I told her what happened to me. And she said, why were you walking alone so late at night? And unfortunately, this is what so many of us hear. And you know what I did? I stopped talking about it. I didn't tell anybody else. And I still walked home at night alone because I had to. I had no other choice. But I stopped wearing dresses because I thought maybe that would attract attention, maybe this wouldn't happen to me again. And I'm not alone in this. So many people have this exact same experience. For so many survivors, the first question they hear is, why did you go out with that person? Why were you wearing that? Why did you go to that bar? Why don't you just leave him? Why were you alone? So instead of beginning the process of healing and recovery, we start down a very long process of shame and self-blame, wondering if somehow we're going to bring this on ourselves yet again. We think twice before we wear a certain outfit, before we go to a certain bar, before we say or do a certain thing, before we decide to walk home or get on the bus, and we stop living and acting the way that we want to. Even if we have never been the victim of sexualized violence, we still think of these things. Because, as the constable in Toronto so delicately put it, if we don't want to be victimized, we have to stop dressing like sluts. But the truth is, we do not provoke violence against us. There is nothing I could ever say or do or wear that would make someone rape me. I did not make that man grab me that night because I was silly enough to walk down the street by myself. He chose to do that because he wanted to do that, and I just happened to be there. How much different would our lives be if everyone understood this? Particularly the cops and the lawyers and the judges out there understood this one simple thing. We wouldn't think twice about our safety before we planned our evening's activities. We would choose to stay home instead of going out. We wouldn't spend our hard-earned money on cab fare instead of walking alone or taking the bus. We would ask for help if we were hurt in our own homes by our families and our partners, because it would never occur to us that we would be blamed for it. We would wear what we wanted to wear, and we would wear what makes us feel good about ourselves and what expresses our true individuality and even our sexuality, and we wouldn't hesitate to talk about it and report it if we were victims of sexualized violence, because we would know that it had nothing to do with us, that it's a serious crime and it should be reported. We would never ever think that we, for any reason, deserved what happened to us. And when we told our friends and loved ones, the only questions we would ever hear are you okay? What can I do to help you? Do you want to go to the police? Let's start here and now by refusing to blame ourselves and refusing to blame each other for the violence that's perpetrated against us. And let's send a clear message that we will not accept blame anymore.
I'm Danielle, and this is Frankie, and we're with the Memorial March for all the missing and murdered women of Edmonton. This is the start. This walk is really important because this is the start of where I end off with. I memorialize all the women who have been raped, murdered, and victimized all across the city and all across Canada. In 2003, a 12-year-old girl was sitting outside of a bar after a fight with her mother. 3 young men between the ages of 18 and 24 picked her up, took her out, gave her a few beers, sexually assaulted her, and left her on the side of the road. The judge acquitted the one guy and the 2 guys did a minimal sentence and some community hours. Why? Number 1, the girl was sexually assaulted before by her family, so she was used to it. 2, she was sexually aggressive because she kissed one of the boys. And 3, the semen found on her panties were not from the perpetrators. And so she asked for it. The same judge was a Crown prosecutor in a case earlier than this of 2 young men who had picked up a prostitute on the street, beat her to death at the age of 29. The girl was found beaten to death. The 2 men got off. Why? Because she was a prostitute and she asked for it. Shame! All across the city, women are being victimized, whether it's from spouses, whether it's from men, or whether it's from women on women. One of the things I wanted to say was, Derek, I'm really glad you brought up the men. Men in institutions are getting raped too, and if anybody thinks that the clothes that they wear in the institutions are sexy, think again. It's not about the clothes. The one thing I have to say is there's over 133 women here in Edmonton who have been murdered or who are missing. The majority of the women who have been found murdered have been half-clothed, sexually assaulted, or brutally beaten. Is it their fault? Not all of them were prostitutes. Some of them were nurses. Some of them were just regular people. I don't think that it's fair for us women to be blamed by any means. I think it's time we take responsibility. And like the young lady said here, when someone is raped in a community, it's always the woman who is asked to not walk alone at night. Why isn't the man with the blue eyes and the blonde hair asked to stay in case they get accused of being the rapist? Thank you.
I thought that Brenda brought up a really good point about silence. One of the things that most memorials have in common is a moment of silence. I say no silence. I say instead of a moment of silence, we have a moment of yelling out no. Exactly. I say that we speak out, we shout, we make ourselves heard, and we absolutely forget about silence. Silence is what is killing women, silence is what is keeping people abused, and silence is the problem. There are good beaches in many places of the world, and yet, for some reason, women don't get raped there. So, really, is it the skin, or is it the person who is doing the raping? If you're naked and you're not getting raped, well, that blows that clothing theory right out of the water. Anyway, it's good to see everyone here today. I'm so proud that you all turned out. I'm so proud that we can take ourselves out of the situation of being victims, put ourselves into being empowered, and put ourselves into the situation saying, I am a human being, I am not an object, you cannot do what you will and what you want with me because I am a person, and I am saying no.